Dharma Bites is brought to you by Free Buddhist Audio, the Dharma for your life. Our work is funded entirely by donations from our generous listeners. If you would like to help us keep this free, make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. Thank you, and happy listening.
So the way I often put it personally, in a slightly crude way, when people ask me about that, is I say, well, there's an inherent contradiction if you're striving for insight into the not I, in terms of I am trying to see through my illusion of my permanent self, that you're hitting a contradiction in there. It cannot work. Bhante explains that more philosophically in a seminar quote that became very well known must have been around 1979 or 80, in the Mitrata Self and Other. It was called the Bitendential Value of Being. Some of you will immediately recognize that as a typical phrase by Herbert Günther. In the context, I'm going to read 2 paragraphs from it. Being, with a capital B, is more or less a synonym for reality. So Bhante talks about it. In the realm of ultimate reality, there is no subject-object division. It's as though on the level of empirical reality, on the level of ordinary experience, you need a double approach. Reality has bifurcated into subject and object, self and other. So you are to approach reality not only via the subject, but via the object. In fact, in a sense, the best way to approach the bitendential reality is via the object, rather than via the subject, because to do things via the subject, as it were, is your natural, one-sided tendency. Even if you approach what you consider to be reality, it is still just you approaching. The approach still takes place within the basic dichotomy. You are still doing something for yourself, which is a contradiction in terms. So therefore, the altruistic approach is as necessary as the self-regarding approach. You are sort of making a true two-pronged attack on reality. You have, as it were, to gain being not only for yourself, but for others. Otherwise, you do not gain reality at all, because you cannot. It is only you plus others who can. So when you plus others attain reality, that is, the bitendential value of being, which has been realized, prajna representing your attainment, and karuna representing their attainment. If you approach the non-dual reality from the standpoint of subject, your experience culminates in prajna. If you approach from the standpoint of the other, your experience culminates in karuna. And these two coalesce. They form one value of ultimate reality. To put it very simply and practically, it is not enough to just sit there in your meditation. You've actually got to go out and act unselfishly, which brings in the ethical, the other-oriented dimension. It is that only which will break down the barrier, as it were, between subject and object. You quite literally cannot realize reality by yourself. That isn't even a possibility. This is what the Bodhisattva sees when he gives up the idea of individual nirvana. There is no nirvana for me, as distinct from a nirvana for them. Well, I hope that wasn't too long. You can always reference it again. I've always been inspired by that passage. But I think we sometimes don't look at the implications. First of all, it collapses the entire scheme of the bhumis, of the 10 steps listed by the Dashabhumika Sutra. Because step 8, irreversibility, becomes meaningless. What are you in danger of falling back to? A personal liberation which doesn't exist? And in fact, the Mahayana progressive steps becomes rather meaningless there. Secondly, it also dissolves the scheme of the 3 paths. It becomes merely a didactic method. There are no 3 paths, there are no 3 goals. What Bhante is effectively arguing is the very nature of reality means there's only one path and goal, which is the altruistic one, taking into account other beings. There are no arhats in the degenerate sense. There is only one goal, awakening for the sake of all.
We hope you enjoyed today's Dharma Bite. Please help us keep this free. Make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. And thank you.